Welcome to All in Yellow,
the official Norwich City podcast.
Such with the corner. Oh, good, and almost got a touch, and it's in by Darren Eadie. 3-0 to Norwich.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of All in Yellow, the official Norwich City podcast. This week's guest is a City legend turned pundit and presenter. It is, of course, the one and only Darren Eadie. Darren, an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm very well. I feel very privileged to have been asked to be on one of your episodes. I've watched them all and been thoroughly enjoyable. So no, I feel very privileged to be part of it. Thanks for asking.
No, pleasure to have you. And as you say, you're actually used to being behind the mic at the minute, aren't you? With NR1 LIVE, asking the questions. How did that all come about?
Well, I've worked with the club for many years in terms of hosting stuff since I finished playing. And like yourself, I've worked in media for quite a while with Sky and TalkSport and BBC and ITV and various things. And got approached by the club to host their sort of TV channel Matchdays, and it was a no-brainer for me. You know, it's talking football. It's my job I did before, so it's a very easy fit. But I've loved it. I've really loved it. It's given me the opportunity to get back involved with the football club on a more regular basis. You know, as I said, it's talking about the football. It's meeting up with lots of ex-players and current players that I've played with and stuff. So it's been great to kind of do that and just build relationships with people again and have a general chat. And as just like this is really, I don't try to think about it too much in terms of when we get our guests on. I think it's nice when it comes quite naturally and that kind of chemistry and conversation flows pretty simple. And I think when you're talking football, people are willing to open up and, you know, I hope I do a decent enough job at getting people to do that. It's been great fun and what a season to be part of it as well. As much as we had, you know, the relegation last season from the Premier League, it's great to be part of such a successful season so far. Touch wood, this season everything's going fantastic.
Yeah, Darren, it's a really enjoyable watch on a match day. I love tuning in. I think you do a fantastic job, you and Rob, of course. But just let people watching know exactly what goes into that show production-wise, because it's not a small operation, is it?
No, an awful lot, and I think the beauty of it is we do make it look like it's put together fairly easily, and it's not. You're right. You know, I think we've got 3 or 4 cameras. We've got 2 cameras out sort of on the gantry, one in the stands. Generally, there's a whole production company behind it in terms of working in a big van, an OB van outside the ground, putting the show together. Leading up to the show, there's the production side of booking guests, putting slides together. Finding stats, you know, all these type of things. You know what's like, Dan, you stepped into my shoes for a week when I couldn't do it, and you know, it's certainly a skill to learn. But I've loved it. You know, working with an earpiece and having the open people in the gallery talking in my ear whilst I'm talking to other people. It's a difficult skill to learn, but in terms of the production from the football club, it's been brilliant, and the club have been fantastic in backing it, because I think, you know, we've already received rave reviews from national newspapers in terms of what we put together during the COVID times and people not being able to get to the stadium. I think it's been a great outlet for fans to be able to still engage with the football club and the football club to still engage with the fans whilst this is all going on. And it's been thoroughly enjoyable. And I've looked at other clubs, Premier League clubs, and their TV stations and what they're providing. And I have to say, on match days, it's uncomparable to ours. There's no comparison. We're far better. I know I'm going to say that, but the production side of it is. I think the quality of the show is brilliant, and actually you can see by the views we get compared to those football clubs, we're exceeding Premier League clubs. So yes, it's been great. But yeah, there's an awful lot that goes into it, but I think the club does it very, very well.
Yeah, and you can tell that you really enjoy it as well. You make it look easy. It's a great watch. But you've also been working recently on the War Paint Challenging Stereotypes series. I know you had Amal Fashnu and Stephen Fry, kind of like stories that are untold, really. How much of an eye-opener has that been?
Yeah, a huge amount. I mean, the first one we did, I met War Paint last year and was asked to get involved by Norwich again to kind of help work with them in their partnership with Norwich. And I met Danny Gray, who's the founder and the owner of the brand, and got on him instantly. A very charismatic guy, a very handsome guy, and he suffers with body dysmorphia. And you look at the man and you think, well, how? But that to me was the whole reason behind it, was because it kind of engaged me. And why is he feeling like that? You know, and this is the mental health side that we've talked about before many times. You know, just because you perceive he's a good-looking guy and he seems like he's got it all together, he has his own issues. And I think being involved with that, and again, the football club being at the forefront these types of challenging these stereotypes. The football clubs, again, is massively in front of other clubs in terms of, I think, their engagement with brands and different types of brands outside of the norm of football. So it's been really an eye-opener. I mean, to get Stephen Fry on, the first one we did was unbelievable. I know you guys did a podcast with him as well. But
he's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, they say you shouldn't meet your heroes, but he's always been one of mine. I was a massiff fan of Blackadder when I was younger, and QI was like one of my favourite shows ever. And you know, I was really quite nervous about meeting him, but he's just obviously been a big Norwich fan. It's an easier introduction for me, but he's a very charismatic, open guy, and it was just a brilliant interview. And I have to say, he was outstanding on the day, and I know he has his issues, and he was very complimentary about me. I'm still need to get one of the lads to cut the piece for me, because during it he said about how I was charismatic, intelligent, intellectual, articulate. So I'm still to get that bit yet. I'm going to use it as my screenshot. So
you didn't say that about me.
I'm sure he did, but it's just a surprise when you got someone like that who you're kind of in awe of. And I was with Stephen Fry. I don't get starstruck by anybody, but with him, he's this just his presence and what he does and how he talks and the things he gets involved with. I'm a big fan of his, and to be part of that for Norwich City and get the opportunity to challenge those stereotypes around mental health with the club and people like that was just a brilliant thing to be part of.
You guys are rubbing it in. I missed the podcast with Stephen Fry, and I still regret it. I have met him once, and it was, as you said, pretty awesome. Yeah. What sort of reception have you had, Darren, for that series? Have you had anyone contact you and said, actually, yeah, you know what, talking about that and listening to you has really helped me?
Do you know what? An amazing amount, and that's the thing. What's not surprised me. It hasn't surprised me almost. I think it's been. Danny's had the same. Within the release of the first one with Stephen Fry, I had people, and I do on a regular basis, messaging me on DMs and through Twitter and social media, for Instagram, not asking for advice, but just kind of sharing their stories. And I think for them, it's helped be able to do that. I'm not a professional. I don't profess to be. What I say is I can give you an idea of my own experiences, and that can help you to understand that you're not alone. And I think that's been a massive help for people, just to be able to reach out and kind of not feel alone in these times, and especially everything that's been going on with COVID as well. It's been a real kind of difficult time for everybody for various reasons. So the fact that people can reach out to myself and Danny is nice, but I do feel an air of responsibility at times as well, because I know how I felt, and I know how those people are probably feeling. So it's making sure, for me, it's just about listening and kind of giving my side of my story and telling them that I had similar feelings, different type of triggers, but similar types of feelings. And I think that's all they want to hear. If they need to get some professional help, they can go and get that. But I think initially that first point of contact is what people need. I was the same. I didn't want to go and speak to a professional or psychiatrist because I felt I was being judged. I just wanted someone to sit down and listen to me and understand that, am I feeling normal? Is this normal? And to hear those words, first of all, was a great relief to me. And I'm sure, hopefully, that's what I give to others as well.
Yeah, and that kind of conversation is more important now than ever. I mean, it's been a year now where we're all effectively just in our homes, and those thoughts do come into play. And talking about it is just so key, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive. And as I say, it's not about giving advice. It's not about judging people. It's just sitting and listening, because once you share something like that, I think it just feels everybody I've spoken to just believes it's a massive weight off, just a massive, almost like putting letting the air out of a lilo or something like that, just that release of that pressure. And then you can start building blocks from there. But it's taking that initial first step, which is sometimes the hardest. But the longer you leave it, the more difficult it gets. So the more people can open up quicker and sooner they can, then the better. But it's been an eye opener for me, because when I had those issues, I thought I was alone. I thought I was struggling and I couldn't speak out and talk to people. And the amount of people that I knew myself personally, in terms of friends, family, that would then open up to me and said they'd suffered in the past, and it was just huge. And I was shocked to find out just how many people I think have these issues throughout their times and periods of their lives. And for me, I don't look at it as a weakness. I take massive strength from it. I'm a completely different person now to I was 5, 10, 15 years ago through those experiences. I think the negative experiences you have in your life probably make more difference to you than the positive ones you have. I think for me, it certainly has. It makes me more empathic. I think being a footballer and trying to put the comparison of the two together, when you're going through your career, you can become quite selfish. You have to be to succeed. You have to be driven and selfish. And I think you're very focused on your football career and what you want to do. But then once you come out of that, you realise life's not like that, and you need to kind of find your inner self. And it took me a lot of years, I think, to find that. But I like to think now I'm certainly a better person than I was many years ago. And as I said, I think those bad experiences are the ones that have experienced it, sort of shaped me the most and made me the person I am today, which I'm kind of thankful for. It certainly makes me stronger, not weaker.
That's interesting, Darren. You talk about your transformation over a period of time, 5-10 years. When I met you as an adult, not when you came to my school to give me a certificate. When I met you,
you were taller than me though, weren't you? I bet you were.
I probably was taller than you then, yeah. When I met you, when I started working at the club now, 10 years ago, but I think you came along 8 years ago. You came along and talked about something you were setting up for celebrity football matches and perhaps working with the foundation to help raise funds. You've done a lot of that and you've helped a lot of charities. Just talk us through some of that, and especially when you came to Norwich to set up those games.
Again, when I finished, it was kind of, for me, it was finding another identity. That's been probably the biggest struggle since finishing football. I finished at 28. I thought my career was going to go on to at least 35. So when 28 came along and I was retiring, I didn't really know what to do. And that was the beginning of my problem. So I was kind of reaching out as to finding what I can do in life. And the charity element came along, and I had quite a few, obviously, friends in terms of football and a few celebrity friends. So decided to put these football charity matches together. I knew football, I knew celebrities. It's an easy thing for me to do, and it took off quite quickly. The celebrities love playing football. They love playing on decent football stadiums, and the fact that, again, I spoke to Norwich quite early and engaged with the football club, and again, Norwich being the forward-thinking club they were, it was an easy sell, really, to raise the money for the Community Sports Foundation as we did, playing charity football matches. And I think we had 4 or 5 great years at it, and we've raised tens of thousands of pounds, probably into hundreds of thousands, I think, for the CSF in terms of over the entire period. So I think celebrity soccer is now raised over 2 million. So we're going strong. We've got more games booked up for this summer as well. So look, it's been brilliant. It's been a release. I think it's always nice to give back where you can, and the fact that you can go to such football clubs as Norwich, and we've done Everton, with Crystal Palace. We've done lots of big football clubs, and when you're engaging and working with their charities, it's a lot easier than going to them and saying, "Can we hire the pitch?" and that way. So the effort's there. The club put the effort in because you're raising the money for the charity, but also we're there to provide those celebrities that want to come along and play football for nothing, and on a Premier League stadium, and that's what they love. So. It's been great, and it's going from strength to strength. So, yeah, something we certainly want to continue.
There were a couple of highlights in there for me that I always look back on.
What you can talk about?
Well, yeah, ones that I can talk about because I think the crowd saw it, so it's okay. The highlights of Jamie's game 1, where Darren Huckabee's team were winning heavily at half-time, and then you had a conversation with him about trying to balance it up a little bit, and he wasn't that keen.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't want to swap sides. I think he just wanted to annihilate the opposition like he normally does. So, but we managed to talk him round, and it's quite good. I think the games ended up being 15-14 in the score or something like that. So, as much as you want, it's strange because as ex-players, when we engage in it, we take it a bit more fun-like, and we want that kind of high scoring. But actually, the celebrities are really quite competitive, and they take it seriously. So when you try and maneuver things to make it more interesting and entertaining for the crowd, I don't think they like it very much. They kind of want to win and they want to do it properly. So,
that was proved by the fact that Jamie Abbott came on, scored his customary penalty to tie the game in the most recent one, and then James Argent from Towie took matters into his own hands and notched a winner up the other end, I think.
Yeah, that was the whole point, and it was like, even the penalty we earned to get Jamie to be able to take, it was like we knew we had to try and manufacture it somehow. But everybody in the team that it was going against was reluctant to actually give the penalty away. They didn't want to do it. So it's like, someone's got to do it. We can't, you can't just dive. We're going to have to get someone to foul someone. They're like, I think we have to. So, but look, it was a massive occasion. And Jamie, an iconic figure at Norwich, and it was really special times as well. I think it was was a time when the football club was doing lots of work, and the CSF's a brilliant foundation and raises huge amounts of money for the community and do fantastic work. So to be able to be part of that and raise money for them by playing football and having a good night out with the celebs the night before was a bonus.
And as players, obviously, you never lose that competitive edge. But I just want to take you back to your early playing careers for Norwich. Now, what was it like coming through the academy back in the early 90s?
Great. I mean, probably very different to what it is now. I came through the era which was Trowse and then moved on to Colney. So Trowse was a very different era. Keith Webb was my youth team manager at the time, and I know Keith Webb really well. And I know Keith now works with the FA and is an FA coach and educator, so he teaches coaching. He was very different back in the day. His manner now compared to what he was then is very different. He's very technical now, and he's very, I guess, aware of taking care of the boys and making sure things are done right. Back in the day, he was a bit more, how can I put it? He was a bit more in your face. He was quite aggressive. He was quite hard on us. But that worked. We had a lot of people talk about the Man United side in 92, 93, the academy that brought through all those fantastic players. We had a similar thing at our level. There's myself, Jenny Kieran, Adi Akinbaye, Andy Marshall, Andy Johnson. There was probably 7 or 8 of us that went on to have pro careers out of that youth team. So as much as people say there's a right and a wrong way of doing things, it worked for us. And Norwich has always had a rich history of doing that, of producing young players. And that was the reason I joined the club in the first place. Why I moved from the West Country at 16 to Norfolk was because the club had a history of producing young players into the first team, and that was something it was a conscious decision for me to do because I saw a pathway.
Do you ever get jealous, Darren? Now, we had Neil Adams on in one of the early podcasts, and he talked about Trowse and then the original Colney and what it used to look like. Do you get a bit jealous now when you see what the training ground looks like? Do you wish you'd perhaps played football in this era? I'm presuming in terms of facilities, I guess the facilities are unbelievable, what's provided for the boys. But I loved my time in the youth team at Norwich, and Gordon Bennett, rest in peace, Gordon. He was a big part of the club as well, and Sammy Morgan as well. I loved that era, and it worked for me because I became a pro and I got into the Norwich first team at 18. So I wouldn't say I prefer the way it is now compared to what I had. I was successful the way I managed it. Who would have known if I was in it now? Would have had the career I had? So I don't know. I loved my time at Norwich in the youth team. I think it was a very different time. The boys are very different. The group were really together. We probably got away with a lot more than we would have nowadays in terms of a youth team. But again, that worked for us. So
in what way, Darren? What would you have got away with then that you wouldn't now?
Nights out. I mean, for instance, when we shouldn't have been. But even as you don't want to condone, but 16, 17-year-old lads, as they do, they want to go out, and we used to go out as a group. And I remember one particular. I think it was New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve. We were out, and we was in. I think it was Gundry White's or something, which was in Norwich at this bar at the time. And there's quite a few of us in there. There must have been 9 or 10 of us in there. We probably should have been in there, really. Well, we shouldn't have been. It was legal. We were underage, but we did. And so we're all kind of messing about on the dance floor and having a few drinks and stuff. And we look into the distance above over the heads of people, and you can see right down where the bar was. You can see right through to where the entrance was. And as we looked up down there, in walks Keith Webb. But we didn't know at the time. We obviously knew Keith was in there. He obviously didn't know we were in there. He wasn't looking for us. He was just on a night out as well. So we had to then kind of pretend we weren't there. So we all started ducking down on the dance floor, trying to look out the way. And everybody started to copy us like we were doing some kind of stupid dance. So we had to then kind of just maneuver ourselves and shuffle ourselves out of the way. And I think we got away with it. I think we did. So, we managed to kind of get out of the place. But that was what we did, That was the way we did. We didn't sneak around, but we were young lads that were out kind of exploring. And I think probably the football club knew that to a certain extent and let that happen because they knew we were young lads, and we were, you had to find your feet. You had to still be young lads and enjoy yourselves. And I think the club maybe turned a little bit of a blind eye at times, but as I say, but it was bonding, and that's what it was all about, and that's why we had the camaraderie we did, and that's why we had the success we did, and that's why we produced so many players that era, because we had that way of doing things. So say that I'm not sure there's a right or a wrong way, but it certainly suited us back then.
Is it safe to say, Darren, it's probably a good thing there wasn't social media
Yes.
in those days? And who would have been the biggest offenders on social media from your crop of players?
The whole lot, all of them. I mean, the obvious one would be was Jamie Curran, because Jamie was. I grew up with Jamie as a kid. We come through the ranks down at Southampton together. We joined Norwich together at the same time. We were in digs together, me and Jamie. Jamie bought a house next door to mine when I bought my first house. He lived next door. Jamie was the most natural goal scorer I've ever played with in terms of finishing. Just an unbelievable finishing. We could see that from his I think he scored something like 90-odd goals in 2 seasons in the youth team. He was just phenomenal. But Jamie left the night out. Jamie left to burn the candle at both ends. I would like to think that I kind of reined him in just a little bit. He probably turned me a little bit wild at times, and I reined him in. So we were a good balance for each other. But Jamie admits it now. Jamie's gone and had a long career, longer than any of us of that era. But I think he does probably have some regrets in those early years where his career was going compared to, it was right up there. He was playing in the Premier League, and all of a sudden he did probably burn the candle at both ends, and his career fell away before he then came up again. So, he doesn't. I don't think he has any regrets, but I think he probably certainly looks back on it and thinks he could have done things differently. But that was Jamie. And that's why we got on so well.
Were there ever sort of hangovers in training then?
Yeah.
Is that
normal? Okay, you can admit now.
Do you know what? I could tell you so many stories. I remember and this is the honest truth, and I feel terrible for telling this story because I was a pro at the time. So Mike Walker was the manager, and I think we were playing. I think it was Boxing Day or something. But I went to a family's christening the day before, and we used to get these gatherings quite a lot. And the family I was involved with at the time were it's a big family, so everybody would get together on these occasions, and. My uncle, the uncle, the chap who Stephen, his name was, a great guy, who passed away actually, sadly, many years ago. But he used to brew his own scrumpy. So he had this scrumpy that he made in this cask. And when he got there was this big, huge thing. And I've been a West Country boy, cider was my thing. So I'll have a bit of that. I'll have a couple of glasses of that. But we don't realise scrumpy gets you drunk from the legs up. You don't realise you're drunk until you try and stand up. And you could tell how strong it was because literally you had to release the valve at the top and this big hissing sound come out of this thing. And I thought I'd just have a couple of drinks. We had a game the next day. I thought, socially, just have a couple of drinks. Within a few, I was gone, absolutely gone. And I remember leaving that evening, and I wasn't in great shape, and I knew I had a game the next day, and it wasn't intentional. So I got home, and I think I was probably having a bit of a disagreement with the wife at the time, and we had a bit of an argument, not massive on my fault. Right, that's it. I'm not going home. So when we got home, we lived in a place where there was a park and there was a bench on the park. I'm going to go and sit on the park bench for 10 minutes and just chill out and calm myself down and get myself together. So I went to the park bench, fell asleep, and then woke up the next morning when I had the game. Literally, I had about 2 hours to get to the game, and I woke up on a park bench. So I went straight from there home, quickly got changed, went straight to the game. And I scored the next day, so I must have done all right. So
I was going to say, you were going to say you had a worldie, weren't you?
Yes, it wasn't all bad, but I think I must have been my concentration level must have been at their peak because obviously I felt fine the next day, but I knew what I'd done, and I kind of regretted that. But you live and learn. I was a young lad at the time, and but I scored, as I say. I don't think anyone noticed. That's right.
And no one's ever known. Do you think it would have been more dangerous? I guess in those days, Darren, I'm sure footballers were paid okay, but it was nothing like the wages of today's footballer. How dangerous would you lot have been earning 30, 40 grand a week?
Well, I think it depends who you've got around you, your friends and your family, how you manage that. I think it would be difficult, but I think that's probably why a lot of the players now are a bit more kind of guarded and shield themselves away from that for those exact reasons. There are still some that lose their heads. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's all about the people you've got around you and your personality yourself. I think, Jamie Curran would have been a rogue if he was on 40 grand a week or £40 a week. It didn't matter, So I think it's down to the personalities of the individuals more so than the finances, but it certainly makes things a lot easier. But actually sometimes, the more money you've got, I guess the more experiences you'll go and perhaps go on a yacht somewhere, rather than going out into bars all the time. So there's different ways, I think, of managing it. I think it's down to the personalities rather than the amount of money. But again, as I said, it's about getting those right people around you to be able to manage it best. Look, another story for you. I think I might have told this one before a few places, but when I first broke into the sort of first team squad, and this again was the kind of era going out and drinking culture and lads all together. And this was the era of, this is when we were just about to get to Europe. So, that era, early 90s. And I was in the youth team, and I just sort of broke into the first team squad. And I remember the kind of iconic lads at the time was Tim Sherwood, Lee Power, all these lads were kind of first team players, Royal Fox. And I was just breaking into the squad, and they had a night out, and they said, "Want some of the younger boys come?" So we're like, "Yeah, we'll come out. We want to get out." But that was, again, showed quite early on how those older players involved us in the football club and wanted us to be part of it, which then took us under their wing, because it made it easier to step into that arena. And I remember going out and having a night out, and by the end of the night, Tim Sherwood lived in Norwich somewhere, and he's gone, "Well, why don't you just go back to mine for a party?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right." There's about 50 of us. So he said, "Well, just get a load of taxis back." So we all jumped in these taxis. There was blokes, women, all jumped in these taxis back to his for a party. And we pulled up to his house. Taxis, off they go. We'll get out. Tim's got, and Tim starts. He's like checking his pockets. He's like, "I've lost my keys. I can't get in my house." So we're all stood there thinking, what are we going to do now? The taxis are gone. So we're going to have to either call cabs to go back into the team. He's gone, "That's fine." I see, look, there's a window open on the top. Who's the smallest one? So up I go. I'm the one. So they get me to climb in this little tiny window. Fortunately, at the time, I could just about kind of fit through it. So you'll have to do it, down. You're the one who can get through. So up I go, shimmy through the window, jump down, sort of skimmy through, and I'm making all this noise, banging around trying to get in. It was a heck of a squeeze to try and get in. Drop down the other side, look out the window. There's no one there. I could just see a bush with these heads just popping up. On come the lights in the house. It's not his house. It's not his house. So you can imagine, I hear the dog barking. It's like, what am I going to do? So I had to manage to kind of scramble back out through the window as quick as I could and just peg it off as they're all, laughing their heads off behind this bush as I'm climbing back out the window. But that was the type of stuff that they found funny. But in terms of what we did, that kind of broke me into the squad, I guess, and kind of made me part of what they did. So, yeah, it's funny times. But looking back on it now, I guess those things would probably not happen that often.
That's amazing. And you just touched on it there, but you were so young when you first broke into the squad. I mean, when I was doing my research on dates and your debut, etc., I was thinking, he can't be old enough. But were you 18 when you were playing in Europe? I mean, that was pretty much unheard of, especially with Norwich and your debut coming against Vitesse Arnhem in the UEFA Cup. You were so young.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was very lucky. I didn't expect it. I've been involved in the first team squad a few times. I think I'm still the youngest Premier League debutant at 18 for the club, which is something which I'm kind of very proud of. But yeah, I mean, it showed that Mike Walker had faith in us youngsters. In the biggest game in the club's history, Vitesse Arnhem, to basically call me into the office and just say, "You're involved in the squad, Darren, for the week." And I thought, brilliant. Didn't really think too much of it. And then I'm not going to get on, am I? I'm sure I ain't going to get on. I'm just going to sit on the bench. They don't put youngsters on games like this. 20 minutes to go, I get the curly finger from Mike Walker and says, "You're going on." So it was, I didn't expect it, but it all kind of happened quite quickly. And then I made my Premier League debut the Saturday following that game against QPR and scored on the Premier League debut. And then obviously we went on to play Bayern Munich and I played the home leg. I was on the bench away from home, and on the home leg I started the game as centre forward with Chris Sutton. And I was a winger. I was a left winger, and I played out on the left. So the fact that it showed Mike Walker had confidence in me to put me as a centre forward to Chris Sutton in the biggest game in the club's history was, I think, testament to the group of lads that we had, but also the manager giving faith in youngsters, very much like Daniel Farke does now. He wasn't afraid to put us in if he felt we could do a job, and that was amazing. And to be stood, I remember it vividly, standing in the tunnel, Carrow Road, against Bayern Munich, and I was looking to my right, I think it was. And it's Lothar Matthäus, who's obviously just won the World Cup as captain with Germany a couple of years before, who was standing next to me. So it was all very bizarre, but I didn't really think too much of it, because when you have no expectations when you're 18, you think it's going to be like that every week. So when you get older, you kind of then think a little bit more about it. But as a young 18-year-old, I just couldn't wait to get out there and play football. But it was all a little bit bizarre and came around quite quickly. But yeah,
I hope you have a copy of this, because I've got a copy of this. Was from your debut against Vitesse.
Oh, was it? I'll probably have somewhere. My son's got all my memory, but I don't keep anything, so my son's got it all. My son Taylor has all my shirts and programmes and paper cuttings that people used to keep me. I keep them all, but they're all in a box somewhere. My son has them. But yeah, it was special times to be involved in that European run as we did. We hoped there'd be lots more of that, but the club's been sort of up and down in years, and it's much more difficult to break into that now. But to be part of that, and I know there's kind of comparisons of teams now and then, and drawing the comparisons, but that team, that squad we had then was phenomenal. It was brilliant. It had no immediate kind of outstanding stars in it, but just as a squad together and the team spirit and the togetherness, they were a top bunch, and you'll do really, really well to be that one there.
It was like an amazing time. I was at school. Alice probably can't remember that one, I would suggest. She's probably had to...
A bit too young for that.
A little bit too. Probably had to ask Dad.
Ask your dad, he would know.
Yeah, it was an amazing time. And you talked about that squad togetherness. How much fun was it getting back on a football pitch with those guys when Inter Forever came to town a couple of years ago?
Look, it was brilliant, mate. Again, another one of those days where they're raising money for the Community Sports Foundation again, and to have that kind of recreation of that game. I missed the Italian leg. I was on the bench at home, and away I actually had a temperature the night before the game. I was supposed to play, but I got a temperature, and I was locked up in bed, out away from everybody else. So Jamie Curtin took my place on the bench.
It wasn't the cider.
No, not this time. It wasn't. Perhaps I should have had some. That might have sorted me out. I'd have been fine if it was that. But it was a brilliant occasion to have them back at Carrow Road. Oh, it was brilliant for about the first 10 minutes until I got smashed by one of their players and nearly broke my leg. So then it got a bit angry and a bit competitive after that. It started off quite friendly, as it does. It's kind of generally, you're kind of knocking the ball about. But then when that happened, you could see there was a turn in our thoughts. And, when you're playing against players like Zanetti and Materazzi, you got these players you think are going to be feisty anyway. So we had to step up, and it did become really quite competitive in the end. And it's it wasn't just a friendly match as much as it was quite competitive. And I think a great occasion to be able to get out there. And you can still, some of the boys, as much as they're older, they've still got it. And Dan will know that and you know that, Alice, from watching the games, the charity things we play. And when you play against us, sometimes people think it's still easy, but it's the knowledge they have in the brain to be able to get in the right place at the right time that sets us apart. Still, the legs are gone, but the mind is still there.
No, definitely. I'm sure the legs haven't gone, but yeah. I want to come on to your move to Leicester now, because you were the club record signing, weren't you? But I remember reading that you actually didn't really want to leave Norwich at the time, but the financial situation meant that the club couldn't say no to the offer. How did you feel about moving?
I didn't want to move. I was really happy at Norwich. I was enjoying my football. I just signed a new contract probably a year before with Bruce Rioch, who was there. So I was on good money. I was on Premier League money in the Championship. But the club felt I wanted that, and I felt I earned that. So I was financially, I was very happy. I loved my football, loved the area, living here. My son was born here. So we were very settled. But when the club was going through the period it was, and I think Delia had just taken over at the time. And again, it was all a massive surprise to me. I was called into the office by Bruce Rioch, sat down, and he said, "We've accepted an offer from Leicester. You're free to go and talk to them." And my first reaction was, "Well, I don't want to go and talk to them. I'm not interested." And he basically said, "Well, if you don't, the club will go into administration. It's that bad." They needed the finances to be able to help the club to continue and not do that. So, what choice did I have? Of course, I wanted to get back to the Premier League and play there again. Wanted to do that with Norwich. And if it wasn't going to be with Norwich, where would I go? And logistically, funnily enough, the closest club to Norwich Premier League at the time was Leicester. So Martin O'Neill had gone there, and he was the one who wanted to buy me. So I had connections with Martin as well. So, I didn't want to move, but I suppose the move felt right. For those reasons, and I never regretted it. My dad was a Leicester fan. He was born and bred in Leicester, so that made it a bit easier as well. But I never wanted to leave. Do
you think Norwich fans understood at the time why you had to leave? Was it quite public that you didn't want to?
I think so. I mean, I've spoken a lot about it since, but I think they did. I think people were well aware of the financial plight the club was in, and Delia's unbelievably, she's such a fantastic woman, and Michael as well, just great people. And, I remember Delia, when I left, she sent me a postcard, so anybody could have read it, sent me a postcard with a picture, drew a picture on it of somebody crying, saying, wish you all the very best for the future and keep in touch and we're going to miss you and all that. So just a wonderful woman. She made my wedding cake. So we've got a lot of history, but it's just, I understood, and I felt, if I was going to move, that was the right thing to do to help the football club as well. So, it was a difficult time, but it's one I think I had no choice in doing in the end. Otherwise, the alternative was unthinkable.
And did you always know that you would end up coming back to Norwich? Obviously, your career ended way sooner than you had of hoped, which we'll come on to in a minute. But was Norwich kind of always your home in your head then?
Yeah, I love the place. You know, it's a great place to live and bring a family up. And I think when you've had success somewhere, you generally migrate back to there anyway. And I like to think I had a good time at Norwich. Say my kids were born here. I married a Norfolk girl. So I was always going to come back. It was something that was always on my mind. And yeah, it's my home. I moved up when I was 16. So I've spent more years here than I have anywhere else. So it was a no-brainer for me to come back. It was just a matter of when that was going to be.
Did you, while you were playing at Leicester, did you live still in Norfolk and commute? What stage was the family at then? Were the kids around at that point?
I had my son at the time. We still had our house here. We moved to Leicester. We moved lock, stock and barrel. We sold the house up, moved up there. I wanted to do it properly. We came back we had family here, so we came back every weekend. Virtually after every game, I was driving back. So we spent a lot of time back here anyway. I was obviously then lived in Leicester in terms of Monday to Friday training. If we were obviously playing away, we wouldn't, but generally we were home games, and when we had weeks off or days off, we'd pop back to Norfolk. It was only a hour and 45 minutes, so no biggie really. So yeah, it's just a great place to live, and that's why there's so many of us ex-pros residing around here, because we know the benefits of being here.
Yeah, it really is. So you obviously moved to Leicester. At what point did your knee really start to become an issue? Because obviously you had injuries before. Am I right in thinking it was sort of 26 operations in the end that you had on your knee? When did you know basically how big it was?
Literally the day I woke up from the operation, told my career was over. I think that was the defining time. Up until that point, I'd always got back from operation. I always felt I'd be okay. As I said, I'd always had little operations in my time at Norwich. I moved to Leicester, and the one good thing about moving to Leicester was when I joined, Martin O'Neill was a big fan of mine, and I was a big fan of his as a manager. And I remember doing my medical and having all the tests and having a scan and all that. And I remember the surgeon saying to Martin at the time, he has had issues with his knee. We need to make you aware of that. But he says there's no reason why he can't go on and have a long, prosperous career. Or, we don't know, it might not be great in a year or 2 years' time. It's just one of these things we can't really tell. And Martin O'Neill just turned around bluntly and said, I don't care, I want to sign him. So that was it. He made you feel welcome straight away. And I never, after every operation I had always recovered. I'd always got back playing. So even to the point where I went into that kind of final operation, I felt there'll always be a result out of it. I'll always get back from it. And I knew it was different from the moment I woke up, because normally when you wake up in recovery, you're then taken back to your room. As soon as I woke up in the recovery room, my wife was there, our physio was there. I think even my agent might have been there at the time, and that was unusual. So as soon as I woke up, I thought something's not right here. And it was basically told straight away. And the surgeon was in there and just said, "Look, Darren, we've tried to do all we can, but your career's over. You can't play anymore. So you can try, but I guarantee your knee is in no shape to be able to play elite football." And I knew as well. As soon as I came back, I then tried the rehab for a bit, and I just knew. I mean, even from that day, I struggled to run on it because it hurt so much. But there's no way I could play football. My game was built on sort of speed and twisting and turning. And when my knee was in the shape it was in, I knew pretty straight away how there was no chance of me getting back. But yeah, it's a really difficult one to take because I never believed that would happen. I thought it would be my choice to retire.
I suppose people struggle sometimes to sympathise with footballers who have had an injury like that, who've had their career curtailed, because they think, oh, these guys have had the life of Riley, they're earning big bucks, they're set for life, it's not a problem. The realities of that, of having that structure taken away from you, that income, how difficult is that to process for someone? I mean, you're 28, it's not old. How tough is it to process that?
Yeah, my identity as well, that was the biggest thing, because I was a Premier League footballer. That's what I was. That's what I did since I've been a kid. So from one day of doing that to literally the next, walking out from the football club, and I even took my boots with me. I don't know why I did. I remember, they say you hang your boots up when you retire. I didn't. I took them off the peg and put them in the bag and took them home. And I still live out of a wash bag now, like footballers do. I still have a wash bag which I've got all my stuff in. It's weird, but it's more about my identity. I was a Premier League footballer, and that's all I ever concentrated on. So when I then came out of it, I was like, well, what am I now? And still to this day, I don't really know. I'm trying to find my way through life. And I think that's what maybe some people do throughout their lives. But for me, it was trying to find an identity to what I was going to do next. And I think it was not the embarrassment, but you didn't want to kind of speak up and ask for help, because for those reasons people would say, well, you're a footballer. Well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the triggers are. The feelings are still the same. It's like anybody in any walk of life. If you're doing a job and you've done it all your life, and then the next day it gets taken away from you, that has a natural effect. And I describe it a lot to people, because when I finished playing, I didn't watch football. I didn't go to the grounds because of the smells, the sounds, everything was just too much of a reminder. And I try to describe to people is that, the biggest passion you have, the thing you love to do the most, if one day you're doing it, the next somebody says to you, you can't do that anymore, but you go and watch your mates doing it, you're like, no, I ain't doing that. Why would I want to do that? So very quickly it became, I wouldn't say my enemy, but it became something I completely steered away from, because it was too painful to be around. So then when you do that, where do you find your identity? Where do you go next? Because I did okay at school, got my GCSEs, but I couldn't apply for a job and just go and do that, because I didn't have the qualifications to do it. So it took me a lot of years to kind of work out where my path would take me. But I'd like to feel I'm quite entrepreneurial, and I think my best skills lead into working for myself and being my own person and doing my own things and setting up my own businesses and all these type of things I've done since then. So yeah, it's difficult, really difficult, and I miss it. I still miss football every single day. Still miss playing. I still miss being around in changing rooms. But you learn to live with it. Like any loss in life, it is a loss. It's a grief process. I think you miss it and you lose it, but you learn to deal with it over a period of time.
It's so true what you say there, though, because even if it wasn't football, anyone that's enjoying the career they're working in, regardless of what they're earning or the benefits that come from that, if anyone at the age of 28 is then told you can't do that job, that must be absolutely heartbreaking. And I guess what was different for you as well is that because you were so young, you probably didn't have that time to kind of have a roadmap out of football, what next with the chapter that you would kind of move on to. How quickly did you have to rethink your life, I guess?
Yeah, you're spot on, Alice. It was very much like that. I had no time to prepare for it. As much as I say, I got back from every other injury that I had. So it was a massive shock to the system. I just didn't know what I was going to do the next day. I literally remember waking up the next day and laying in bed thinking, I've not got to go to training today. What am I going to do? So it was really difficult. And you're right, being so young, but that's what, trying to explain it to people was, as much as it was my job, and that's a difficult enough thing to have taken away from you, it was my love as a kid. You ask most people, and what would you want to be as a kid? They want to be a footballer. I had that, so I loved my job, and I was very lucky to do that. Not everybody loves their jobs, but even if they don't love their job, but then losing that would be a big enough hit to them. But to actually love your job and do the thing you've done all your life, passionate about, and loved being around the people that were doing it, to have that taken away as well. So it wasn't just the job, it was losing that side of it as well. I lost my life. I lost my friends. I lost my network around me. I lost my support network, because that was all part of it. Football's this kind of football bubble that we all reside in when you're in it, and you're very tight-knit and you're trustworthy. And that was one of the biggest things I had to deal with when I came out of football. Was I thought it'd be the same coming out of football, and quite quickly I realised you can't trust everyone, and there's people there to take advantage of you. You looked after in football very well, and you trust your teammates, and you trust each other. So for me, it was a big learning curve to be in the real world.
Were there friends that you maybe lost that, before a game would always be texting you and asking how things are, and then once you're not kind of on that pedestal, aren't so interested? Did you have to deal with that as well?
Yeah, you realise your real friends, without a doubt. The ones that were just ringing you because they wanted some tickets. But that, you wheedle them quite quickly. And I'll probably say I've got, 10 really good friends now that I know I can trust and would always be there for me. Apart from that, they're just people that come along every now and again, you meet and you move on. But look, yeah, it was really, really difficult time. And as you say, I think you find out a lot about yourself. I think, first of all, for me, it was like learning how to behave as well. Because when I was in that football environment, I talked about the nights out. I've given you some examples of those. I hate using the word banter because I don't like that word, but the kind of team spirit and camaraderie we all had, and the way that you'd go at each other in a changing room was relentless. And I mean relentless. It was awful at times, but it was funny. But you had to kind of be part of that to be part of the group and stick up for yourself and succeed. So then when I came out of that, I would have groups of friends that I'd met in the school playground that I'd be friends with as well. And I'd go out with them on a night out. And that side of me would come out because I'm just on a night out, and that's how I knew to it. And I could see like deep intakes of breath, and I'd say something. Now in a football change room, it'd be funny, but I kind of learned I probably had to temper my personality a little bit, because that to them was a bit more shocking than it would have been if I was in a football changing room. So I had to learn to be a different person as well. So it was almost, like I say, finding a completely new identity, finding, a completely different person to what I was when I was a footballer.
Are any of that close circle of friends that you talk about now, that 10, are any of them ex-pros?
Yeah, still. And actually, I've probably come more friendly with the ex-players who I haven't played with. More so, I'm still great friends with Jamie Curitan and James Scowcroft. We played together in England 21s and things like that, and Andy Johnson occasionally, and but now it's more like I play with Ewan. I'm still good friends with Ewan. I'm good friends with Dean Ashton, Hucks. So it tends to be the group that live around here now. I guess because I don't know whether you migrate to the same area and have the same kind of beliefs when you live in Norfolk. I don't know, but we all get on really well as a group. We socialise together. Norwich and Norfolk is I don't say very lucky, but they are very lucky to have the group of players that still live around here and want to be part of the football club and represent the football club. I think that's quite unique.
Do you have much interaction with the current players? Because obviously you're at Carrow Road loads with the work you do, and also as your hobby, I guess, as well. Do you kind of feel that you've mentored any players coming through?
Well, actually, yeah. So I've sort of chatted to Todd occasionally and some of the younger lads. I think I know when I was playing, you're very wary of anybody outside the circle. So I know that, but I think the work I've done with the current players, they open up to me a lot more than they would do to maybe other people, because they understand that I understand it, and they know where I'm coming from, because they know I've been there. So, and I think the current group of lads they've got as well are very much respectful like that. And I went up recently to do some shirt presentations for people who've had so many appearances and things like that, which again is a great thing the club do. And you can see the boys are really respectful of that, which I think in my day, the lads probably wouldn't have been quite so respectful. They probably would have mugged them off a little bit. Whereas the lads now, I think, are great. They're really engaging in it. I think they appreciate it. And yeah, I think that they're striving to be, they want to be us. Those lads in there want to be remembered like we are. As a footballer, you can have a career and you can earn money out of it, but ultimately I think you want to be remembered for a period of time, as someone that played well for your football club. I think the worst thing would be to play for 10 different clubs and not really be remembered that well by any of them. I'd rather have one club and be remembered well by that one, because I think everybody wants to be liked, and I think if you can have a good period at a club and do that, that's just part of my personality. I guess I've always been a people pleaser, and I think I think you always naturally migrate back to somewhere you've had success.
What are your impressions of the club now in terms of the direction it's heading? I don't know how well you know Stuart Webber, Daniel Farker, and other staff up at Colney. What are your impressions of the vision and what's going on and what's been happening this season?
It's massively impressive, and I think I've been lucky enough to have an insight into it. Yeah, obviously I know Stuart really well, and Daniel. Many times I've spoken to Daniel, done interviews and talked to Daniel privately. I think the way the football club is doing things at the moment is perfectly right for the situation they're in. You can't fault anything. Take the off-pitch stuff, for instance, they do with, as I said, engaging with brands and things that are not the norm, the way they engage in the LGBT community and the Community Sports Foundation. There's not another club in the country that has a charity network like Norwich does. It's phenomenal with the nest and everything they built as well. It's just amazing. So it's a very special football club. It's a very unique football club, and I think Stuart Webber understands that. I think he gets that. Daniel Farker gets that. I think the way they're doing things, they've been burnt in the past with trying to do things too quickly. And I think the way football has changed, they're going about things the right way for Norwich City Football Club. As a fan, it doesn't happen quick enough because you want success and you want to be in the Premier League and you want to stay in the Premier League. But it's such a difficult step to make. It's so difficult now because anybody who's only decent, you'd have to have 2 or 3 really good seasons previously to be able to get a move. You can have 6 months now and you're gone. And then those players tend to stock up in the Premier League. So when you step up into that, the gulf is huge from the Premier League to the Championship. So it's very difficult to make that transition. But the way the football club go about it, and I think they understand that, and it's a learning curve for everybody, for Daniel. That was his first Premier League season last season. For Stuart Webber, he's got experience of that, and he's learning all the time. And I think the one thing is they're very honest with us, which I think fans like. People listen to honesty, and they're very honest and say when they make mistakes, when they think they can improve, and what their vision is and how they're going to do things. That doesn't mean it's going to succeed, but I think we'll buy into it because we understand where the football club is going and why it's taken that route. And I think that is honourable. And I think people buy into that, and when mistakes happen, people are a lot more forgiving because they understand the route the football club is taking. And I think it's great. I think it's still going to be I'm pretty confident Norwich is going to get promoted back to the Premier League. Am I confident they're going to stay there? It's going to take a lot. I spoke about this a lot, and people ask me all the time. I still think they're a way shy of staying in the Premier League. Not because of their technical ability. I just think sometimes it takes a different type of player to stay in the Premier League for that first season. I look at the Leeds United, I look at Sheffield United, how they've done it. They've got some really aggressive players that just kind of fire through games and battle through games. We've got technically really good players, but I think we're probably short of maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 players in that squad that have got that kind of, it's not to say fight, because those boys have got fight, but there's this different type of mentality. So I think we need to get that. But I think the club are aware of it, and I'm sure they're targeting those type of players.
So with all that in mind then, Darren, how exciting a time is it right now to be a Norwich fan?
Love it. Look, to be a fan, I get so frustrated with Norwich fans sometimes about this whole mentality of they like being in the Championship because they win games, and it winds me up so much because it's just my mentality. I want to play at the highest level I can. I want to watch Norwich play at the highest level they can. You tell me beating Man City last season wasn't one of the most memorable games you're going to happen. Might really get to the end of it, but you'll forget about that. You'll remember that game against Man City. So, and for me, it's not just about watching Norwich play. When I go as a fan to Carrow Road, I want to see the best players in the world play at Carrow Road. But then I've been spoiled from doing that against Bayern Munich. I've experienced that. I've experienced playing in Milan for Norwich. So I want that at Carrow Road. I want to see the best players there, not just for Norwich. I want to see the best players in the world playing at Carrow Road, whether that's with Norwich or without them. So, win, lose or draw, I want to be in the Premier League.
Do you think then, we've had some comments recently in the media about what's the point? What's the point of going up to the Premier League if we're just going to come straight back down again? You know who I'm talking about. And I thought the Pinkin, I saw an interview recently, they handled it really well. Actually, I thought they got the point across well. But there is obviously a point to getting promoted because, as you said, we'll have some of the best players in the world come to Carrow Road. And the aim and objective is to have that more and more over the next, however long a period.
Yeah, first thing I would say is, you have to kind of take it who makes those comments. Sav is a good friend of mine. I've spent a lot of time with him at Leicester, but he is sometimes says things for effect, I would say, to cause a bit of a stir, and I think he did that. I don't think he means it. Robbie has this persona about him, and actually he's a kind, caring lad. Probably one of the most insecure people I've ever met in my life. But he has this persona. I remember when he was doing Strictly, he was ringing me up and asking, should I do it? I don't know. And I'm like, whatever. So, I'm not going to tell you whether you should do Strictly and come down to them or not. It's up to you. So he's very much, he cares. But I think he's been very clever in his football career with building the persona of himself to have the career he had. And he's finding a way in the media to do the same thing. And I think it's an emotive subject. He knows he's going to get people's backs up. But I take it as a pinch of salt. Robbie will quite happily travel the same sort of distances to go and watch another team in South Wales or, abroad. That's no difference. But because it's Norwich, he thinks, little old Norwich, why should they be in the Premier League? Well, Robbie, Norwich has probably been in the Premier League more years than he has.
There's so much talent in this current Norwich squad, and sometimes it's easier, I guess, for people outside of Norwich not to maybe focus on all of that.
Well, exactly. And look, Norwich has produced players for some of the clubs Robbie's played for at the Premier League. James Maddison's another one. You look, he's played at Leicester. Robbie had a lot of years at Leicester with me. And Norwich has a rich history of producing players that then go on to bigger and better things. So there's always a place for a team like Norwich. Of course, we want to be in the Premier League. We want to be a regular in the Premier League. And I believe that will come back at some point. But to disregard them because of the location is just a nonsensical thing to say. It's just a throwaway comment that was trying to get a reaction, and it got it. But sometimes he's an idiot and he says idiotic things, and he knows that. But Norwich is a fantastic place, and as a player, I lived in Norwich and I've travelled all over the country to play football, and I think it's disrespectful not only to Norwich as a football club, it's disrespectful to the fans, it's disrespectful to the people of Norwich, it's disrespectful to the club. It's just a disrespectful thing to say, and I don't think he meant it. I honestly don't. I think he just wanted to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll let him off. We'll take it with a pinch of salt.
We'll clip it up and send it to him and see what he has to say there.
Yeah.
But Darren, on that note, you've just touched there on what makes Norwich so incredible. But what makes the club so special to you, and where do you hold it in your heart?
It's always going to be a part of me. It was the club that gave me my opportunity to do the job I loved at such a young age, and I'll be forever grateful for that. And not just only that, but the care and attention from the owners. I think it's a unique football club where there's not many owners that actively. There's not many owners that make people's wedding cakes. that kind of sums it up for me.
Was it tasty though?
Is a proper fruit cake, so it was delicious. Yeah, it was. It's that kind of relationship, I think, between the people who run the football club and the people who are players, to the staff, to the backroom staff, to the fans. It's just a unique football club, and you get that a lot at kind of non-league level. That everybody knows everybody, but it's very unusual to get it at such a big football club that's been in the Premier League that you still get that same type of feeling. And saying it's not all about the on-field stuff for me. It's the stuff they do off-field. As I said, the Community Sports Foundation, what they do is unbelievably good. The way Norwich mix with the LBGT community, the way they go about mixing the different types of partnerships to draw awareness around mental health. Everything Norwich does has got a motive behind it for change and for different reasons. And that to me is a special football club. They don't just take the easy route of getting a sponsor that is just going to bring the money in. They want to know the value behind it, of what message they can send as well. So for me, that's what Norwich does best, is being different and being unique.
Absolutely, and long may that continue. Darren, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been so good to talk to you today, and hopefully see you at Carrow Road in the flesh sometime very soon.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, Darren. Thank you very much.
Oh, man. Thanks, Dan.